Welcome, Clear Speak Academy channel. Story: The Mirror of Second Chances. Friends, glowing star, if you love inspiring English stories that help you learn new vocabulary, improve your listening skills, and touch your heart, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a beautiful tale. Today's story is titled, The Mirror of Second Chances, a deep and emotional journey that blends fantasy, inner growth, and a powerful life lesson. In this story, we follow Elena Carter, a woman burdened by regret, who stumbles upon a mysterious mirror in an old mansion. When she touches it, she's transported back in time to the moment where her life changed, and is given the rare opportunity to make a different choice. As she explores her second chance, she discovers a deeper truth: it's not about fixing the past, but about embracing who she truly is. Through her journey, she meets a mystical guardian, reconnects with her forgotten passion for music, and helps others find healing. Eventually, she learns that real transformation happens in the present, not by erasing our mistakes, but by learning from them. Speech balloon. Before we begin, here are some friendly questions to help you learn English with this story. Do you know the meaning of second chance? What would you do if you could go back in time for one day? Can you find the past tense verbs as you listen? Keep a notebook and try writing down 3 new English words you learn from this story. Ready to travel through time, grow wiser, and become inspired? Let's dive into The Mirror of Second Chances, an English story that will touch your soul and sharpen your language skills. Let's begin. Open book. In the heart of the forgotten village of Elderglen stood an old, ivy-covered mansion known to all as Windmere House. Children dared each other to knock on its rusted iron gates, and whispers filled the streets about its haunted rooms and ghostly mirrors. Most people avoided the place altogether, but for Elena Carter, it was the beginning of everything. Elena was a 32-year-old woman carrying a lifetime of regrets. She had once been a rising pianist, destined for stages around the world, but choices, fear, and lost confidence had derailed her dreams. Her life had become a quiet echo of what once could have been, working as a clerk in a dusty bookshop, listening to other people's stories instead of living her own. One cloudy afternoon, after her shift ended, Elena wandered into the woods behind the shop. A strange pull guided her, not one of logic, but something old, deep, and magnetic. She wasn't sure why she followed it, but the forest path led her directly to Windmere House. The gates creaked open on their own. The mansion, though neglected, seemed alive. Vines curled like fingers, and broken windows blinked with ghostly glints of light. Something about it felt familiar. Heart-pounding, she stepped inside. The interior was a frozen echo of the past, velvet drapes torn with age, a grand chandelier dangling above a cracked marble floor, and paintings that seemed to watch here. But it was the mirror in the great hall that captured her breath. It stood 10 feet tall in a gilded frame carved with symbols of clocks, stars, and phoenixes. The glass shimmered strangely, like the surface of a lake catching moonlight. As Elena approached it, her reflection shifted, not matching her current self, but showing a younger version of her, dressed in a crimson gown she hadn't worn since her last piano recital a decade ago. When her fingertips touched the cold glass, the world around her blinked out. She awoke in a warm, golden room, her childhood bedroom. The air smelled of lavender and sheet music. Posters of composers lined the walls, and her beloved piano sat polished in the corner. A calendar on the wall read March 14, 2011, the day everything changed. The day she walked away from the opportunity of a lifetime. Panic surged. Was this a dream? A delusion? But her mother's voice floated up the stairs, unmistakably alive, calling her for breakfast. Elena's heart shattered and soared all at once. Her mother had died 4 years ago, yet here she was, humming in the kitchen as if nothing had ever gone wrong. Elena rushed downstairs, blinking away tears. Her mother, radiant and smiling, embraced her tightly. "You're up early, sweetheart. Nervous about the big audition?" That sentence struck Elena like lightning. The audition, the conservatory scholarship she had once skipped because of fear and self-doubt. She had a second chance, a real one. The mirror had done the impossible. In the days that followed, Elena relived her past with new eyes. She noticed things she once missed: how her mother's hands trembled when holding coffee, how her father silently supported her from the background, and how fear had poisoned so many of her decisions. But this time, she wasn't going to let it win. With every note she played at the audition, she poured in not just talent but memory, passion, regret, hope. The judges were moved. One whispered, "We haven't heard soul like this in years." She won the scholarship, the first fork in the path that had once led her to a dull, forgotten future. But time in this world flowed differently. Each day she lived here, a small part of her current memory faded. Faces blurred, names drifted like mist, and her sense of purpose began to wane. She was torn between relishing the life she'd regained and fearing the loss of who she had become. One evening, she found herself in front of her childhood mirror, a smaller replica of the one at Windmere House. In its depths, she caught a flicker of herself as an adult, standing back in the great hall of the mansion, hands still pressed against the glass. The mirror was still connected. She hadn't lost her old self, not yet. Conflicted and afraid, Elena wandered through the woods of her memory, trying to decide, should she stay and build a new life? Or return to the present, wiser and changed, to face her real timeline? It wasn't long before she began to sense a presence, as if someone, or something, was watching her choices. She wasn't alone in this second chance. The mirror had a guardian. And soon, she would meet him. It began subtly. At first, it was just a whisper in the wind, a name she couldn't recall. Then a flicker in the corner of her eye, a tall figure cloaked in gray, always watching from afar. Elena tried to dismiss it as stress, but the feeling grew stronger each day. Someone was following her, not to harm her, no, it felt different. It was as if he were studying her, waiting for something. The figure never came close, never spoke. Just stood at a distance when she walked through town or practiced at the music hall. She saw him once reflected in a puddle but not in reality. A ghost of time? One night, unable to sleep, she wandered to the edge of the lake behind her house, a place where she used to practice compositions in solitude. The water shimmered silver under the moonlight. And there he was, standing across the lake, motionless. This time, Elena spoke. "I know you're watching me. Who are you?" The figure didn't move, but his voice echoed across the water, gentle yet firm. "I am the warden of the mirror. I do not interfere, I observe." "Why are you following me?" "Because no one enters the mirror without consequence." His words struck Elena cold. "So this is punishment?" "No," he replied, "this is your trial." He stepped forward and crossed the water without ripples, as if time itself made space for him. Now close, she could see his face. Ageless, with eyes that shimmered like fractured glass. "Many are given a second chance," he said, "but few understand the weight of what they've left behind. For every path you relive, another is dimmed. You cannot have both." Elena clenched her fists. "But I'm not hurting anyone. I just want to fix my life." The warden's gaze softened. "And in doing so, you may erase what you've learned. The pain, the struggle, even your resilience. The mirror gives a gift, but every gift has a cost." His words echoed in her heart long after he vanished into mist. That night, Elena stared at the stars and wondered, was it enough to live a perfect past if it meant losing her growth? Days passed, and her success bloomed. She was accepted into the conservatory. She met old friends she had once pushed away, rebuilt bridges once burned. It was the life she always dreamed of. But as the days brightened, her memories of the present dulled. She began to forget the old bookstore, the dusty smell of parchment, and even the ache of failure that once shaped her courage. One morning, she looked in the mirror and could no longer recall the face of her best friend in the present, Marla, the woman who had stood by her through years of regret. Panic gripped her. Who was she becoming? Desperate, Elena returned to the childhood mirror, the one that reflected more than glass. She whispered, "I want to see my other life." The mirror shimmered, and for the first time, showed her present self. Alone in the great hall of Windmere House, still with her hand on the glass. But something had changed. The reflection looked thinner, faded, as if her soul was being absorbed into this second chance. Suddenly, the warden appeared behind her in the mirror. "Choose wisely, Elena. The longer you stay, the harder it will be to return." "Why is this happening?" she asked, voice shaking. "Because time is not a toy. It bends, but it remembers." He placed his hand over hers in the reflection. "You must find the anchor, a memory powerful enough to remind you of who you are. Only then can you return with what you've learned." Then he was gone. Elena knew what she had to do. She spent days searching for the anchor, combing through journals, replaying music, revisiting people from both timelines. But the more she searched, the more the world around her began to tremble. Strange cracks appeared in walls, moments looped endlessly, and people repeated sentences like broken records. The second chance was unraveling. Then, in a forgotten drawer of her desk, she found it, a letter. Written in her own handwriting, dated 10 years in the future. How it existed in this timeline was impossible, unless the mirror had placed it there. The letter read, Dear me, if you're reading this, it means you've been given the gift I once wished for, a chance to go back. But don't be fooled. A life without mistakes is not a life at all. You are not your failures, Elena. You are the courage that survived them. Don't forget who we are. Come back. With love, you. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she read the words. Her heart pulsed. This was the anchor. Not a memory of success, but a memory of struggle. Of acceptance. She rushed back to the childhood mirror, holding the letter tight. I'm ready, she whispered. The glass shimmered, and for the final time, the mirror called her home. The transition was not gentle. As Elena passed through the mirror, the world cracked like glass around her. Her body felt as if it were being pulled in every direction, fragmented into versions of herself, the dreamer, the coward, the artist, the doubter. Each fought to hold on, but one voice rose above the chaos, the one that had written the letter. The part of her that had survived everything and still believed. When she opened her eyes again, Elena was on the cold marble floor of Windmere House, gasping for air. Dust danced through the air, and the mirror loomed above her, dark and silent. She had returned, but something felt different. The air was heavier, the mansion quieter, as if time had paused to let her back in. She stood slowly, her limbs trembling. Her reflection in the mirror showed her present-day self, older, worn, yet somehow, stronger. In her hand was the letter, now brittle and faded, but still legible. Proof she had not imagined it. As she stepped outside, she was struck by how familiar everything looked, and yet how much had changed within her. The streets of Elderglen were the same, the bookstore still stood with its crooked sign, and her small apartment above it was untouched. But inside, Elena Carter was no longer the woman who once lived here. She had journeyed through time, faced her younger self, and chosen wisdom over fantasy. The next morning, Elena returned to work. Marla was at the counter, organizing a shipment of poetry books. Her eyes widened when she saw Elena walk in, not because she had been missing, but because something radiated from her now. A quiet confidence. You look different, Marla said softly. Elena smiled. I feel different. For the next few weeks, Elena lived intentionally. She began playing the piano again, not for applause, but for herself. Her fingers danced across the keys like they had in her youth, but now each note carried the weight of experience. She began teaching music to local children, offering lessons after hours in the bookstore. It wasn't the international stage she once dreamed of, but it was real. It was hers. But her journey wasn't over. The mirror hadn't just given her a second chance. It had awakened something. A deeper truth. That life was not about undoing the past, but transforming from it. And now, with her heart open and spirit unburdened, Elena started noticing changes in the world around her. People began sharing their regrets with her. Customers lingered longer at the counter, confessing missed opportunities, broken relationships, roads not taken. Elena listened patiently, often placing her hand over theirs and saying the same thing. You may not have a second chance to change the past, but you always have a chance to change who you are right now. It was as if the mirror's magic still resonated within her, not in the form of time travel, but in the wisdom she now carried. Her words had a healing effect. One elderly man rekindled his dream of writing a book. A young artist who had almost quit began painting again. A single mother found the courage to forgive her estranged sister. Elena became a quiet legend in Elderglen, not as the pianist who vanished, but as the woman who helped others rediscover themselves. Then one evening, as she was closing the bookstore, a familiar shimmer caught her eye. In the reflection of the glass door, she saw a man standing across the street, cloaked in gray. The warden. He raised a hand in greeting, and though his face was solemn, there was a hint of pride in his eyes. He nodded once, then turned and walked into the shadows. Elena didn't chase him. She didn't need to. His presence confirmed what she already knew. The mirror had closed its portal, but its purpose remained alive within her. That night, Elena wrote in her journal, the same leather-bound book she had once used to vent her regrets. The past is not a prison. It's a path. We cannot erase our missteps, but we can grow stronger because of them. Every scar is a reminder that we survived. And every morning is a mirror of second chances, if we dare to look deeply enough. She closed the book, placed it beside her piano, and began to compose again, not a symphony of perfection, but a song of becoming. A melody of hope. Weeks passed, and Elena's life took on a quiet, purposeful rhythm. She no longer yearned for grand stages or accolades. Instead, she found peace in guiding others, in small moments of connection that once seemed insignificant. Each piano lesson, each cup of tea shared in the bookstore, was now sacred. She had not only reclaimed her music, but had become a mirror herself, reflecting strength, clarity, and the value of choice back to those who had forgotten it. One chilly autumn morning, as golden leaves danced along the cobblestones of Elderglen, Elena received an unexpected visitor, Thomas Hale, a former classmate and a rising pianist who had once competed against her for the conservatory spot. They hadn't spoken in years. He had taken the opportunity she'd passed up and risen to international fame. But now, standing in her modest bookstore, he looked tired. "Elena," he said, his voice uncertain. "I don't know if you remember me." "I do," she replied warmly. "You always played Chopin like your heart was on fire." He smiled faintly. "And you always played like time stood still." They shared tea and stories, but soon Thomas revealed the reason for his visit. Fame had not brought him peace. He had lost his spark, his joy, and was now chasing shadows of applause that left him feeling emptier with every performance. "I saw your name in a magazine. Someone mentioned a woman teaching music out of a bookstore in Elderglen. They said she helps people find themselves. I guess I was hoping you could help me too." Elena listened closely. She saw in him what she once was, haunted by unfulfilled potential, confused by the illusion of success. She didn't offer answers. Instead, she invited him to play. They sat at the piano in the back room, and Elena handed him the sheet of her latest unfinished composition, The Song of Becoming. Thomas hesitated at first, then began to play. The notes were raw, uncertain, yet filled with emotion. As he played, something shifted in him. The rhythm slowed, the melody deepened. He wasn't performing anymore, he was remembering. When the last note faded, he turned to her, eyes glistening. "How did you find this feeling again?" Elena smiled gently. "I stopped playing for the world. I started playing for myself." The following weeks saw Thomas staying in Elderglen, living in a quiet cottage outside town. He played with the children Elena taught. He took walks through the woods. He rediscovered his love for music. Word began to spread, not of a famous pianist retreating, but of a sanctuary of second chances hidden in a forgotten village. And slowly, people began to come. A widow seeking to forgive herself. A soldier haunted by decisions made in war. A writer who hadn't touched a pen in 20 years. A mother grieving a child she never got to raise. Elena welcomed them all, not as a healer, but as a listener. A guide. The mirror had once shown her the path back to herself. Now, she had become the lantern for others. She never tried to explain the mirror's magic to anyone. Most wouldn't believe it, and some truths are meant to be felt, not told. Yet inside, she knew it still lingered, not as a physical portal, but as a presence in the choices she made each day. One evening, while locking the shop, she paused at the antique mirror hanging in the hallway, a small replica she'd found years ago. As she passed, her reflection flickered. Just for a second, she saw her younger self again, standing tall, proud, free of fear. But this time, she didn't reach out to touch it. She nodded to her reflection, whispered, "Thank you," and walked on. Her journey was no longer about returning to the past. It was about becoming someone worth remembering in the present. Winter settled gently over Elderglen, blanketing rooftops with soft snow and turning tree branches into frozen lace. Inside the warm, book-scented walls of the shop, Elena prepared for what had become a tradition, the annual gathering of second chances, where those touched by her quiet magic came together. Some brought stories, some brought songs, others simply brought silence and listened. The bookstore transformed into a sanctuary of shared healing. Among the guests were familiar faces: Thomas, now teaching music in a local school; Marla, who had opened a second-hand poetry cafe next door; and children who had once fumbled with chords now confidently playing melodies of their own. What began as Elena's personal redemption had become a ripple of transformation throughout the village. That evening, after the last candle had flickered out, and the echoes of laughter and music faded into stillness, Elena sat alone at her piano. In front of her lay the completed composition she had titled, The Mirror of Second Chances. It was more than music, it was a journey woven into every note. She played it softly, letting the melody drift out into the snowy night. When the final key was pressed, the lights flickered. The temperature in the room dropped slightly, not in fear, but with a sense of reverence, like time itself had paused to listen. Then came a knock at the door. Elena opened it, not surprised to find the warden standing on the threshold. His cloak was dusted with snow, his expression unreadable as ever, but his eyes held something new, a gentleness. "You have done more than we expected," he said simply. "I thought the mirror was closed," Elena replied softly. "It is. But its purpose was fulfilled through you. The mirror was never meant to be a permanent door. It was a key, to unlock what was buried within." She stepped aside and offered him tea. He declined with a slight smile. I came only to tell you, he continued, that the mirror has chosen its next guardian. Elena tilted her head. Me? No, he said, eyes twinkling faintly. You are more than a guardian. You are a weaver now, of lives, not time. The mirror needs someone new to find it. But you've proven that even without it, people can change, heal, grow. You've become a mirror yourself. He stepped back, fading into the snowy street. One last thing, he said, his voice now distant. Do not underestimate the stories you have helped shape. Even a small light can guide someone home through the darkest night. And then he was gone. The next morning, Elena wrote the final entry in her journal. I thought my story was about regret. I thought the mirror was about undoing mistakes. But I see now, the mirror didn't fix me. It showed me who I had always been beneath the fear. We all get lost. We all make wrong turns. But the second chance isn't in the past. It's in what we do with today. And today, I choose to shine. She closed the journal and slid it between the pages of an old novel she would place on the shelf for someone else to find. Someone who needed it. Someone searching. And as snow fell gently outside, and a new day dawned over Elder Glen, a child paused outside the bookstore window, captivated by the soft piano music drifting through the glass. The mirror may have vanished, but its magic lived on, in the notes of a song, in the warmth of a second chance, and in every soul brave enough to forgive their past to shape a better present. Moral of the story. True second chances are not about changing the past, they are about transforming who we are now. Every day is a new reflection, and in that reflection lies the power to choose, to heal, and to begin again. Thanks for watching.